now my deep pleasure to introduce our speaker today. David Solomon. I was thinking about him this morning, and if I were to address all the facets I'm aware of about David, it would be like trying to lasso the wind. There's so many wonderful parts of David that I'm aware of, and of course the ones I'm not aware of. I had the pleasure of first meeting David when he was approximately 19 years old, just a few years ago, right, David? just a little bit. He was about 19 and I'm about 10 years older than you, so we were very young and in the early days of the Fellowship of the Inner Light. Group of mostly 20s, 30s, 40-something people who were so excited to find family and fellows and a place where we could ever increasingly become ourselves and be ourselves with each other. And I recall I was a young mother at the time when I met David. One of my children was already born, Leah, who's now 37. Anyway, I remember I saw David come in the door, and I thought, wow, what a ray of sunshine. I don't know if I ever told you that, David, but a ray of sunshine came in the door. And it was like, oh, good, you're here, that kind of feeling. And he's ever on the incredible journey of life as a teacher and student, mentor and friend to so many people. And we are just so joyous that you are living here now and amongst us and able to share more often. And so let's open our hearts now to welcome David to share his message today.
I didn't tell Dylan today what I was really talking about. I kept it secret. Usually she wants to read everything that I'm going to talk about so she can give commentary. You know, she was a theologian herself, took seminary, so she's always looking at my stuff. But today, my talk is going to be a little different. I'm not going to have a sermon on the usual soft stuff, as I call it. This one's on the hard stuff. And it deals with international issues, global issues, prophecy issues, you can tell from the title, A New Heaven and New Earth. And I feel like I have a message to give you. You never know how long you're going to be here. So I want to tell you everything I know, just in case. And I got to do that in the next 30 minutes or so. So if I go over a little bit, just be patient with me. Many of you have heard about the impact that killed the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. Most of you, however, are unaware that a meteor 2 miles wide slammed into the Chesapeake Bay 35 million years ago, just 45 miles from where you're sitting. What made the Chesapeake Bay? Terrence is going, David. This meteor slammed into the earth at 76,000 miles an hour. That's 21 miles per second. It came over the northwest horizon. A hot light, brighter than the sun. It would have blinded you if you saw it. And you couldn't have moved. You couldn't have done anything. You went up. That's what happened. The sharks and the whales and the tiny creatures at the time that were part of an inland sea that went all the way to Richmond didn't even have time to register what hit them. The meteor blasted a shallow sea as large as the Grand Canyon. It created tidal waves that flowed over the Appalachian Mountains all the way inland to the Midwest. It had tidal waves that went all the way through Europe. If you had been Noah at the time, you would have perceived this to be the Great Flood. Now, this space rock created fractures in the earth below us, and in fact, we're still sinking today at 5 inches per century because of that impact. So it's kind of neat. We're sitting right on top of the edge of the crater, right where we're sitting right now. Now, this crater is 53 miles wide and nearly a mile deep, but it's been filled in with silt and sand. And I wanted to show you a piece of the evidence. The reason I'm doing this beginning of this talk is because, if you could get this, my suitcase, just pick it up, and open it and show them what's in there. Thanks to Terrence. Terrence has done a little excavating up along some of the estuaries here, and he found this bit of evidence. And hold it up to everybody. Lift it up. It's heavy. This is some of the fossilized remains of that impact. Terrence found that, and also you find lava pieces because it went so deep into the earth that it caused magma to come up and overflow. Now that impact, strange subject for a talk, right? That impact caused initially the earth in this local part of the hemisphere to heat up to nearly 600 degrees. And it lasted nearly 2 or 3 weeks, which was followed by an impact winter. And cooled the earth probably for nearly 500 to 1,000 years. We went into another ice age at the time because of that impact. You can go ahead and just put that down. Thank you. So, no one ever knew the impact happened because there wasn't a human here that we know of that could perceive it, that it happened. Our planet at that time had a near-death experience. Geologists began searching because of this discovery in 1984, and they began digging. They looked at ice cores into our Earth's histories, tree rings to look at dust and evidence that might show other impacts around the planet. And we've begun to find that these impacts are far more numerous and far more recent than we realize. Hundreds of impact craters have been found. In fact, down in North Carolina and South Carolina, there are literally thousands of what's called the Carolina Bays. These impacts occurred 13,000 years ago. Just 13,000 years ago. What happened during that time, 13,000 years ago? We find that the mammoths, the saber-toothed tigers, all disappeared at that time. They went extinct. So these things just don't happen millions upon millions of years ago. Apparently they've happened much more recently. And guess who wrote about them? The prophets and sages in our sacred literature. Our Bible is littered with stories about celestial events that appear from the sky. The last one apparently shifted the poles 10 degrees. And how do we know that? It says it in the Bible. It caused an impact winter that lasted 1,000 years. So between 10,900 BC and 9,500 BC, the Earth returned to an ice age. You can see it in the ice cores. It's not like a mythology that we're applying to history. It's actually history we're applying to geology, and we're finding the geology. It's there. And we find these occurrences appearing every 500 to 1,500 years. Remember the story of Noah? Actually Enoch, who died at 365 years old. Does that number ring a bell? 365, number of days in a year? Talked about it in the book of Enoch. One of the apocryphal books talks about fire descending from the skies before Noah's flood. We move forward in history to a person named Abraham. Abraham, remember Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Fire rained down in the skies, so totally destroyed the region that his daughters thought the world had ended and actually had sexual relations with their father so they could carry on the race. We move forward. Moses and Joshua, if you read your scriptures, fire fell down from the skies and destroyed Egypt. But the angel of death passed over those who had painted blood over the lentils, and they were able to leave Egypt as a result of the death of the firstborn. But if you read on, those scriptures describe fire descending from the skies, stones descending from the skies and destroying 31 kingdoms. Every plant, animal, man, woman, child, gone. And we just kind of read by that as if, well, that's interesting. And we see it again in the relationship of Jehoshaphat and Elisha and Elijah calling down fire from heaven. Interesting stories. This repeating story about fire descending from the skies. We find it throughout. If you look at Scripture with this part of the interpretation, the whole thing lights up because it's full of it. I'll read here from Isaiah. I just wanted you to make the Bible come alive so you can see an area that doesn't make sense, because some of us want to perhaps put it aside. Isaiah says, "Whom shall God teach knowledge? And whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from milk or drawn from beasts? For precept must be upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. For with a stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to his people, to whom he said, This is the rest wherewith you may cause the weary to rest, and this is the refreshing, yet you would not hear. Behold, the Lord hath a mighty and strong one, which as a tempest of hail and destroying storm, a flood of mighty water overflowing, shall cast down to the earth the hand. Judgment also will I lay to the line, of righteousness to the plummet. And hail shall sweep away the refuge of lies, and the waters overflow the hiding place. And your covenant with death shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell shall not stand. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, then ye shall be trodden down by it. From the time that it goes forth it shall take you, for morning by morning shall it pass over, by day and by night, and it shall be a vexation only to understand the report. For the Lord shall rise up as in Mount Perazim. Mount Perazim is where the sun sits still. Remember the story of Joshua and Moses? The sun stood still because they had a battle during the day and God stopped the sun. And then he shall be wroth in the valley of Gibeon, where the moon stood still, that he may do his work, his strange work, that he may bring to pass his act, his strange act. Therefore be ye not among the mockers, lest your bonds be made strong. For I have heard from the Lord God of hosts a consumption even determined upon the whole earth. Isaiah 28. So I bring that up. This whole talk is to not scare you. It's to bring you information that you be aware of these things. Because the prophets, Paul Solomon, Casey, our prophets in the Bible, have talked about these things. The years 1998 and 1999 came, 2012 came, we're still here. It's like I could tell you, I'm still here. So, is prophecy wrong? How were they wrong? Or did we do such a good job that these things are not going to happen? That the changes now, we're going to walk into this golden age, and we're going to walk into this new heaven and new earth, and all things are going to be great. We still have Facebook. We still have Twitter. God, we hope we never lose Facebook. Anyway, so as you all know, I'm going to switch directions here. And I'll tie all this in. Those folks that witnessed that event 13,000 years ago, when the skies cleared and they could see the skies again, they actually discovered there was a new heaven. Why did they see that there was a new heaven? Because the stars had shifted 10 degrees. And it's shown in the poles that they moved slightly. The wobble that we have today was caused by that impact. And it reads in Genesis that a serpent entered the garden. You see, these things, and most of these things are described by the Arabs back in the 7th century after Muhammad. The 4,000 star names that we have today are all Arabic. You probably didn't know that. And they have meanings, and most of them means to rend, to crush, to ignite, to be on fire. And these stories come from because fire has descended from the sky. And these things have an indelible memory because they're passed on through our mythology, our literature, and our scripture. I'll read you a little account, and this is from Abraham Lincoln in 1833. When I was a young man in Illinois, he said, I boarded up for a time with a deacon of the Presbyterian Church. One night I was aroused from my sleep by a rap on the door, and I heard from the deacon's voice exchanging, Arise, Abraham, the day of judgment has come. I sprang from the bed, and I rushed to the window, and I saw the stars falling in great showers from the sky. But looking back into those heavens, I saw the grand old constellations with which I knew so well and were acquainted so well, fixed still in their places. Gentlemen, the world did not come to an end then, nor will the Union now. He actually included his experience into his talk to the Union. 1833, 1866, 1899, 1966, those same showers caused people to fear that the end of the world had come. So many millions of stars fell at one time that it literally fell like rain. So, ever since Christ left us, he said that within a generation, all these things concerning the end of the world will come to pass. And we're still here. What did he really mean by that? Certainly a generation didn't mean 40 years. It meant the Piscean generation moving into Aquarius. So, based on some of these things, the origin of the Fellowship of the Inner Light and Paul's work, he had a idea, a vision to develop a school of prophets. And so we had built Hearthfire Lodge up in the Shenandoah Valley, Carmel in the Valley. And, we as students would study to become, we hoped, to become prophets. I had a dream recently that told me that ain't so. You don't become a prophet, God chooses you to be a prophet. I told Paul that in a dream, actually. So that was our intent up there. And so that intent is still carried by Sharon Solomon now up in Brooks Garden. And that intent, she put herself in a place that's so remote that the end of the world could occur up there and she wouldn't know it. I'm serious. It's that. If you've been up there, it's that remote. It's way, way out there. Why should we concern ourselves with these things at all? If it's going to happen, what can I do about it? I mean, so what? Well, let me give an analogy here, because I think there is something we can do about it. Since I got my cancer and I was given 18 months to live, I'm not afraid of death. I've been writing 2 books. I have 2 books at the editor. I've been writing the last book now called The Armageddon Stones, which is what this talk is about. And as you can imagine, I believe my appointed time was near. So I began to look for signs of my imminent demise. Like I would start not to be able to walk, or I couldn't think, or something would start to happen. But also I looked to my dreams, and I began dreaming about dead people all the time. I didn't dream about living, I dreamed about dead people, the deceased, family members visiting me. And it was always short-quipped communications. But after a while, it became like Grand Central Station. Obviously, it was just like nuts. So anyway, I kept a journal of these dreams. I have 3 of these. A daily journal. Mary Elizabeth is here, and is she here? I believe she's here. She's not here. I thought I saw her. Maybe it was her. But anyway, I had a dream May 18, 2014, I dreamed about a gentle King Kong straddling a gorge, a deep gorge. And of course, gorges in dreams represent a line, like a barrier, crossing over. And in the dream, King Kong, this gentle King Kong, this really was a huge King Kong, but he was gentle. Sharon Solomon was there. And she stepped into his hand, and he carried her over to the other side. I was next. I was about to be carried over when I woke up from the dream. It was very real. I didn't think anything about it. I thought, well, if Sharon's supposed to go first, that's kind of weird because I'm the one with cancer. So anyway, I just kind of wrote it down and let it go. Just hold on to that thought, because I want to go in sequence here. I had another dream on August 8th of my bonsai teacher visiting me, who was deceased. And I said to him, "You're alive!" And he just smiled at me like he always did in real life. And then that was the end of the dream. It was just kind of cool. It was like, hi. Exactly 82 days later, I had another dream of Mr. Takanohashi. And saw him again. And this time, he would smile at me and he said, "Nabare!" Nabare. Nabare is a Japanese term for roots of a bonsai tree. You know, the base, the part that makes it look cool. And then he showed me an image of a breadboard, and there was a round piece of dough bread on it, and he cut the bread in two, and then turned it over, and then cut them again in two. And so when I woke up, I knew immediately what that dream meant. Because in writing my book, I had to give a title to the first section of my book, because I hadn't decided yet, and I decided to call them the Nabare, roots, foundation. And the bread was cutting my book in half. Book, meaning the bread was meaning the words of life, the bread of life. And I was cutting in half, and I've been struggling with writing because I thought I was running out of time, so I cut the book in half and literally had it my first book to the editor in 1 week because of that. So now, Mr. Takanohashi, thank you, you're now my editor. So I mentioned the 82 days, right? So let's go back again. I had that dream on August 8th. On August 10th, if you remember, Dr. Mary Hensley spoke here about her near-death experience. And she met Paul Solomon the day before at the ARE and hugged him and didn't know it. And when she came in here to the foyer, she saw his picture and said, "I hugged that guy yesterday." And her partner said, "He's gone." No, I did hug him. So, okay. So she meets me in the foyer there, and she starts talking to me and finds out that I have this thing in my head. And we start talking about near-death experiences and what I've been experiencing. And then she gave a great talk about this experience. So I had that non-dream after-death communication really with Paul then. Exactly 82 days later, on October 31st, I had a dream about Paul visiting me. And in that dream, I was in the president's mansion with Secret Service around us, and he said, "Let's have a drink." Literally, we had a granite, and it was beautiful. All these paintings, like in the White House, it was very ornate, very beautiful. And he said, "Let's walk to the hallway." And in the hallway, I then started talking to him about what happens when you renew the mind. And the light that forms over the mind, causing what's called the Shekinah, unifying the mind, that's what makes a prophet. I said, "Paul, you tried to make us into prophets, but you can't do that. God chooses that." And he just listened. And then I woke up. So then I woke up not realizing that 82 days had separated both of these dreams. And so I went back, exactly 82 days. Well, that's kind of weird. What does the 82 mean? So I start counting 82 days in the future, and it literally ended up a day before my birthday. And I said, "Oh no, dying people tend to die around their birthdays. Am I going to die around my birthday?" Then, on November 14th, Sharon Solomon has her heart attack. I'm going, "Oh my God, the dream's coming true," right? But she didn't die. She came literally an hour within death and had a dream a week before that she was getting ready to pass over. So I said, well, maybe that's when the 82 days counts from. So I started counting 82 days from that heart attack date, and it landed on February 4th. just a couple weeks ago. And it was the day before Paul Edward died. Paul Edward died on February 5th, and he died of the same cancer I did. I held his hand as he died. I thought, well, those are the kind of coincidences I look for. Maybe that's when I'm going to die. And I didn't tell anybody. I only told Belen, and I think one other person, John Crisco. He understands these kind of things. I just didn't want to get out again, like, oh, David's going to die on February 5th or February 4th. So I said to Len, just in case we should get our affairs in order, get the rest of our will stuff done, just in case. So, it's kind of weird. I only know of two people who predicted the day of their death: Jesus Christ and Emanuel Swedenborg predicted his death 5 months to the day. So I said, well, I don't know if I want to know the day I die, but it would be interesting, right? Actually, there was a study done that, would you like to know the day you were going to die? Like that Bayer commercial, you're going to die today of a heart attack. You really wouldn't want to know that. Actually, 96% said they don't want to know. Right? I mean, really, it needs to be a surprise. Surprise! It's kind of like our planetary near-death experience. I like it to be a surprise rather than knowing the day it might happen. That's where I'm going to tie this stuff in. Well, anyway, as you can imagine, I'm counting down the days. I have my birthday on the 23rd. I get an MRI. I even tell my doctor I might be dying. I had a dream about this river that was backing up, and it might be one of my blood vessels backing up. And you better check the MRI because I might explode. I don't want to die of an aneurysm and not from cancer. So, so I tell the neurologist, and she becomes a dream interpreter. And I said, well, all right. Well, just look at the MRI. So, actually, my tumor was getting smaller. And so how am I supposed to die on the 5th? I don't know. So I had a great birthday. Turned 56, which I thought I would never get to. And then I started counting down the days to February 4th. 5 days, 4 days, 3 days. It's really weird waking up when it's the day you're going to die. It's like that girl in Oregon who had the same cancer I did, and she chose November 1st as the day she was going to die. Right? That's the same night, really the same evening with Paul on the 31st that I had that dream about Paul. So, God, this is all too weird. Something's going to happen. So as you can see, I'm still here on the 100th day since Sharon's heart attack, that I'm still breathing. So it goes to show that I don't know the day I'm going to die. So I didn't have a dream about it, but I'm the scientist. I want to try to fit these things in. It's a little bit like an experiment to me, actually. People get really, David, you're weird. So, so anyway, let's see if I can get through this. Anyway, I'm going to backtrack one more time because I wanted to connect the dreams. So on the 29th of September, before Paul's dream, before Sharon's heart attack, we went to Duke University to have an MRI. And I had a special MRI, it's called a PET scan, where they put radioactive fluid. It's actually this device that looks like a brake fluid container. And it's made of lead, because it's got radioactive fluid in it. Anyway, they're pumping that into me, right? So they can see it on the PET scan, see if I have any points of, little green dots. And they didn't find any. They did a comparative MRI, and they didn't see anything. But I didn't know that at the time because Dylan and I sat down, we prayed to God. I said, Lord, we don't know what to expect tomorrow because the oncologist is going to tell us what she sees. So could you give us a dream, please? And I literally woke up 6 hours later at 3 a.m, and I dreamed that Dylan was telling me, David, you're expecting unfaithful waters. That's simple. That's how... These dreams are almost no more than 5 words when it comes from these afterlife communications or from God. In this case, the Len was God. Yeah, there is a mother God, I guess. So, we looked it up. That's not a scripture. It's not an exact quote. It sounded scriptural. But we looked up in the morning on Google and quickly found Jeremiah 15:18. And this is what's really interesting. Why is my pain perpetual and my wound incurable, which refuses to be healed? Interesting. Wilt thou altogether unto me a liar as waters that fail? See? So Delinda knows Scripture better than I, and she hadn't recognized it. The real interesting part was the perpetual pain and curable wound. Pretty obvious reference to my cancer and the type of cancer that seems uncurable. And the second part, the waters that fail, a biblical reference to waters unfaithful, a well which becomes dry and dries up. So in short, it was a remarkable communication from God, right to the point about trust. It requires faith, even when things seem hopeless. Now we tie things together. Why was David talking to me about meteor impacts and that thing down below? As we watch the news today, full of terrorist attacks, threats from ISIS beheading and burning innocent people, talk of economic collapse, talk of Russia threatening nuclear war. It's sometimes difficult to have faith in good and to have faith in God. It's easy when things are nice and we have a warm shower and we have a warm apartment or a warm home and loving friends. But things can change in a minute, in a second. It's difficult not to fear and believe the worst is going to happen. And it's easy to believe, and because we are seeing evidence, perhaps. Heck, 62 million books were written of the book called Left Behind. You have 62 million people that believe the end of days are near. Is it the appointed time for our planet? Ancient mythology often combined our deaths with the death of the world. And they were constantly linking the two together. What do the saints say, those who have recently passed? Have they seen the future? How does it compare with what the prophets said, what Paul said, what Casey said? They say, in their words, something big, really big, is coming. Something that will be the triggering event that causes all these things we've wondered about in the readings and in the Bible. There is a triggering event. Of course, many don't believe in the end of days, and we think, like it says in Scripture, that in the days of Noah we'll be eating, drinking, and having fun. Life will just go on as before. So David, do I believe that these changes have been averted? No, I do not. And I'll tell you why I do not believe so. There's two parts to these prophecies. One is war, and one is a cosmic event that happens. One most likely cannot be averted, one can be. Now, remember, comets, volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis are not bad things. They appear bad. Yeah, if it killed my family, I'd be upset. But these things are made by God. And it was comets that actually filled our oceans millions upon millions, billions of years ago. All that water and ice they have life in them. And when they impact, they cause what has been a constant stream of evolution. When these things happen, we have a sudden evolution to a different phase. So it's constant and then whoosh, constant and then whoosh. We have these events that happen, and they create a new heaven and new earth. They happen microcosmically in our lives, when little meteors hit us in the brain, and they happen macrocosmically to the planet. There was a really wise man in ancient Egypt about 3,500 years ago. His name was Senahus of Sais, and he said to his student Solon, now Senahus taught Pythagoras, so he's a pretty smart guy. So he says to Solon, who was a Greek visiting him, He said, "None of you are hoary with age. And this is the reason. There have been and there will be again many destructions of mankind arising out of varied causes, the most violent of which of these are fire and water, the lesser ones in 1,000 other ways." This has a form of myth, but it really signifies the deviation of the courses of the bodies moving around the earth and the heavens, causing fire and flood deluges. Now these have been put into mythology, and we have these known as cycles and ages, and they combine with the zodiac cycles and so on. The point is that they knew then what we are finding now in the earth. This something big is coming, and the question is, will 90% of us live, or will 90% of us die? That is a tough question, because that's what all the prophecies said, including Casey, and including Solomon, and including Isaiah, and so on. It's something we'd rather not think about, but that's what they say. So, is this a prophecy about the future? This thing called Armageddon, where we have these signs like ISIS and Russia and all these threats. Of course, Christ said, don't worry about the wars. They're going to happen. But lest they be cut short, all life should perish. So we have a choice. The problem now is in this scenario of Armageddon, which has always been looked to as a celestial event in the skies. This is not about a man coming to earth as the second coming of Christ. It's a little secret here. Angels and archangels are represented by these celestial events. They personify physically what we see. Behind them there's a spirit of light and a spirit of darkness. And these wars are fought in heaven. The Zoroastrians wrote about it, the war between the children and the sons of light, and the war between the children and sons of darkness. And this war is going to be fought out in heaven. And there are all these signs of these things that happened before this great war of Armageddon. The Islamic folks, if we could be called the people of the cross as Christians, I would call the people of Islam the people of the stars. Jews are known as the people of the book, actually. The people of the stars have made a very accurate accounting of when this event will happen, and they've kept it rather closely guarded secret. And they know, ISIS knows, that this apocalyptic time is coming because they predicted it back when Muhammad was born in 571 AD. Why? Because Muhammad was born during one of these meteor storms that destroyed much of the country at the time. Just like what happened with Abraham and Lot and Moses and Joshua. It happened at the time of Muhammad. And what they did to memorialize that event and why they believe in it now is because they have 3 meteorites buried into the Kaaba at Mecca. Did you know that? The Kaaba has 3 meteorites on the cornerstone of their monument, and those 3 meteorites were descended from the time of Adam and Eve, Abraham, and passed on. So they, more than I know, I haven't been behind closed walls in Jerusalem. I don't know what the rabbis are saying. But they know that this event that I'm talking about, this celestial event from the sky that's talked about in Revelation, read Revelation carefully. It says right in the beginning, one like unto the Son of Man. Why did he say that? You ever think about why he said one like? Was he talking about my higher self? Perhaps. More than likely, that one like the Son of Man, if you read about it, images of swords and fires and dragons and mountains of stone falling from the sky, all related to this guy. And then the other guy, the beast, the Antichrist. And these two fight. In Islam, they have what's called the Dajjal, the Antichrist. And they have their Messiah called Hazrat Mahdi. Hazrat Mahdi. and they fight. The literalist folks of Islam believe that he is a man who will come before the end of days. And guess who comes right after him in their belief? Jesus. Did you know that? They believe that Jesus will come to seal all things at the end of days, but their version of Jesus is a little different, that he'll convert everybody to Islam. Now, those are the interpretations of the Shia sect and Sunni sects of Islam. But my point is, they are astronomically based. In fact, the Caliphate of ISIS was formed on the summer solstice, the full moon right before the summer solstice. So they believe in astrology. They believe that, and their hadith, their commentaries on their scripture say that the more innocents that are killed, the more they hasten the day of the end of the world. So they are doing, some of these things that don't make sense, they are doing this because they believe they're increasing the time when the Mahdi shall come. You see? That's why they're doing what they're doing. And they're putting this out on the internet, and people are rushing to join this ideological war. That's why. Now, they don't realize what they're getting themselves into. That's the whole... They're excited, actually, about it. And it's sad. Now, ISIS plans to take over Mecca, destroy Mecca, Saudi Arabia, take over Jerusalem. And what does that mean to us? I mean, we're safe in our beds over here. We have our warm bathtubs and heat and in the snow, and we watch these pictures, and it's like it's a movie over there. What can we do about it? Well, we have a chance, according to the saints who have died and come back, that we can avert a great war. Those are the things we can help with. And how can we do that? We can do that by loving our neighbor, by getting involved where we can get involved, and keeping our prayers always in that direction. The one thing that is interesting that I want to bring up, and as far as closing this talk, one of the saints saw this vision. I went to the end of the conflict, this war, even more frightening, because of the conflict with different countries and less investment in space research and NASA. No one could see something happening and approaching Earth. Some small asteroid, but big enough to cause substantial damage on Earth. The good news in all of that is because of this event, all nations will stop all their conflicts and try to work together instead of fighting each other. But it will be too late to avoid what could have been avoided. Starting from that point, the different nations will realize the stupidity of war and will work together for many years to come. There will be finally peace on Earth, but millions of lives lost could have been avoided. And I know, and this was recorded in 2003, this is not too far away in time. So, this was also reflected in a reading that Paul had, that this light, he called it a spaceship, would come and stop the great war that was forming. So, is that event good, or is that event bad? Can it be avoided? Possibly still. But if it ends a world war that could cause nuclear radiation all over the world, that would be a good thing, actually. So we look forward, as the reading said in the booklet this morning, that we look forward to this birth of a new day. You know, on September 23rd, 2017, there will be a formation of stars in the sky in the constellation Virgo. And you know the story in Revelation where the woman travaileth to have a son. She was crowned with 12 stars, the moon and sun under her feet. In Revelation. Well, that formation hasn't occurred since the time of Christ, and it will occur in 2 years. The sun and moon will be under her feet, and 7 stars and the 5 planets will be at her head. It's interesting. It's just a curiosity. I'm not making a prophecy or prediction. We look forward to the birth of this new day, this new heaven and a new earth. It may not be easy, but we have to have faith that everything will be all right. And we have to have hope. And we have to have love. Thank you.